Welcome back to the Playbook. I'm excited to have somebody as a guest who is not normally a guest, but is normally a host. Travis Apple. He's a host of, if you haven't watched it, please do, 52 Weeks of Hustle. I'm gonna do your bio here, Travis.
All right.
VP of Ticket Sales and Service at both the Miami Marlins, Phoenix Suns, worked in the NBA League office at Teambo, has worked for the Magic, Pirates, Thrashers, and obviously excited to have you on today. So thanks for being on.
Yeah, thanks, Taylor. Appreciate it. And yes, to your point, it's always fun to be on the opposite side of the table every once in a while.
For those of you who don't know, Travis runs one of the best sports business podcasts, 52 Weeks of Hustle. Check it out. It's on LinkedIn. Is it on Apple, Spotify?
Apple, Spotify. Yeah, no, I appreciate that.
So you've been on, going to your background that I just said, you've been on the team side, league side, and now everything you're doing with your business. What are you doing today in regards to taking all those experiences that you've had and bundling up to what you're doing now?
Yeah, it's a great question, Taylor. I've always had an entrepreneurial spirit, and I always knew that I wanted to open my own company one day. And looking back on it, I opened it the first time shortly after the pandemic, sold it, and then reopened it just over a year ago. And I always said I was much better off opening it now than I would have 10 or 15 years ago. Because being able to gain that real life experience through a variety of teams and organizations, the league office, and even some of the companies I've worked with on the kind of the sports tech and vendor space has just helped me not only surrounding myself with really good people that have a diversity of thought and opinion and ideas, plus then tie that into just the real life grind of not only a team side, but also the vendor side to then kind of open my own company. I think all of that really helped in the experiences, just even little things, right? You can go granular as like how to build a budget and a P&L. That I don't know that stuff when I'm a sales rep, right? You had to get into leadership to understand that. So it's been a great journey. I've certainly enjoyed it.
How was the transition? Obviously, you've talked about wanting to be, you've always had an entrepreneurial spirit. How's the transition been from working for major sports teams and then starting your own company? Was that the first 3, 6, 9 months? Was that tough from a standpoint of not having the camaraderie of being in an office, not having the camaraderie of being with not only your own ticket sales team, but also representing a big brand? Was that tough for you the first 3, 6, 9 months?
Yeah, it definitely is. I always say there's pros and cons of everything, right? But yeah, certainly that where, my last time in the office and this pre-pandemic kind of team, I had a team of over 100 people. And so having that camaraderie, being able to go into that one specific goal, and then now where I've one person that's on my team. And so it's much more intimate setting from that perspective, but also as you think about the overall business tie-in too, is I miss that, right? I miss having that team. And on one end, it's fun because you're working on a different project daily, weekly, monthly, but you don't always see everything completely through either because you're not with the same team 365 days a year. So certainly some learning curves on that end. I joke, my wife is much better than me and she's in this business as well. She works at the Tennessee Titans, but she goes in the office every day. And so by the time she gets home, and I'm not traveling, I want to leave the house because I've been behind these four walls all day, and the only interaction I've had is phone calls or Zooms. So I'm ready to go out, and I'm peopled out at this point. I've been in the office all day.
For sure.
That is certainly a learning curve and a challenge at times.
No, it's so funny you say that. I go through the same thing, and I didn't know if I was the only person to do that. So that makes me feel better that somebody else is feeling that.
Yeah.
Look, you've ran sales teams, some of the biggest teams. You've worked in the NBA league office. In your opinion, what separates elite reps from average reps? What separates really great revenue producers versus just, hey, we hit the goal every year? And what do those really great reps have in common?
And it's a great point. And that's why I've always challenged everybody I've ever talked to and on my teams in the past is don't be content being good or great. Push yourself to be elite. And I think when I look at the people that are elite, the first part of it, it's almost impossible to be elite because elite should be a moving target. So you're never always there. You're always gaining one step closer. And I think I really look at three things in very successful people, especially probably in any job, but specifically in sales. The first one is passion. Do you have a passion for your business? Do you have a passion for the craft? Do you have a passion for what you're doing? And I always tell people like a passion is not a sports fan. You know it. We've been a team side long enough. Like I have 0 rings to show for it. I've worked for some shitty teams like on the field or on the court or on the ice. But you have a passion for the business aspect. You're not watching all the games, right? So the first one's passion. The second one is work ethic. And I know everybody's, when I interview a lot of people and they're like, I'm the hardest worker. Well, in sales, you can prove it. Are you willing to go above and beyond the Call of Duty? Not the video game Call of Duty, the true Call of Duty. You're expected to make 70 calls, or you the person making 50, 70, or 100. You're expected to set 10 appointments, or you setting 5, 10, or 20. That's truly work ethic and going above and beyond. And then the third piece is coachability. You know, same thing. Everybody always says they're extremely coachable. Sales is a business, you can prove it, right? And you think about, and you want to get granular in coachability, like utilizing AI and leveraging AI to your craft. If you are still not using AI right now, you're crazy. People are going to pass you on the sales board in the sales business. And so I would say those three things, they have one thing in common, and that's you. You can control those. If you surround yourself with the right people, they're going to coach, teach, and train and develop you. But they can't teach you to have a smile on your face and be passionate. They can't teach you to work your ass off, and they can't teach you to be open to learning. If you can do those three things, I'm a firm believer good things happen to good people if you put yourself in a good position. And that, in my opinion, are the three big characteristics that help and separate people from good, great, and push to be elite.
And for you, what was your background? I know growing up in Delphos, Ohio, was there an experience when you were younger that said, I really want to work in this business? Or were you like the rest of us of saying, hey, really passionate about the industry, really passionate about sports, and really want to take a run at getting my foot in the door? What was an origin story for you?
Yeah, so I grew up small farm town and I was a paper boy. So I got a paper route when I was 7 years old. And that was the learning for me of that I'm greedy. And I don't say that in a bad way. I like money.
It's good.
And
Yeah.
so going through that. And then, when I was in high school, I played three sports, baseball, basketball, and football. But then on my quote unquote off time, I wrote for the newspaper for all the women's sports. So volleyball and basketball and softball when I could. And that gave me the first glimpse of the sports business. But I always remember back in junior high, it was like selling magazines, and the top seller got to be in the money machine. Well, you better believe I found a way to get in the money machine. And I got into college and I triple majored in sports communication, journalism, electronic media production. Truth be told, that was the route I thought I wanted to take because I didn't know this business existed. So I had my own TV show and radio show and wrote for the newspaper in college. And I'm like, this is what I want to do. And then through internships in college, one specifically, my sophomore year, I started working at a racetrack. I knew nothing about racing. I started out as the PA announcer and writing press releases. The GM of the track came to me one day. He goes, hey, do you want to make some money? And this is back when interns didn't get paid. So I'm like, yeah. And they're like, go out and sell these trackside banners. They're $1,000. We'll give you 10%. I wasn't a math major, but I knew that was $100, which at the time was like 10 cases of Keystone. I'm in, right? Here we go. And so I started going door to door, zero experience, just selling trackside banners, making money, having fun with it. So starting my sophomore year, I was like, I want to be in sales. I want to be in business. I didn't want to change my majors. And I was just like, all right, I'm just going to write it out. So I got a lot more internships in selling and things like that just to gain as much experience as I could. And truth be told, it was March my senior year, and I didn't know what I wanted to do. I knew I wanted to be in sales, didn't know what. Took a trip down to Atlanta, Georgia, was like, I should move to Atlanta. This will be fun. And I just started like smiling and dialing the teams down there, not really knowing what I was going to get a job at. And I think I annoyed the person so much that between phone calls, snail mail, emails, that they called me, asked me to come down and interview the next day. I drove overnight to get to my interview. I didn't have enough money to pay for a flight. Got a job, and it was like, I remember calling my grandma, like, I'm moving to Atlanta. And she's like, excuse me? What do you mean? And so I got in, and I remember my first day in inside sales with the Hawks and Thrashers. Like, I still didn't really know what I was doing, and I had zero training. And so I surrounded myself with really good people that provided a good blueprint to be successful. And then I just tried to work my ass off to be as good as I could be.
What were some of those experiences you had in your first few years in the industry? Was there a certain mentor that you said, hey, I'm really going to latch onto this person that has really helped you up to this point?
Yeah, and I've had a lot of great mentors and still do have a lot of great mentors, but also great people as well that just surrounding yourself. Like I think I have mentors that are my bosses. I have mentors that are people I've never even worked with, but I also have like just really close like friends that like I would consider a mentor even though they're sat side by side to me, right? Because like we're always challenging each other. And I think one of the biggest learning experiences for me was in this business and specifically in sales, it's a marathon, not a sprint. And I'm 21, 22 years old at the time. And I just remember coming in and I was making a couple hundred calls a day, but I didn't right away see my name at the top of the board or so much further ahead than the other people around me. And it was frustrating to me because I'm like, I'm literally doing 3, 4, 5x the work, but I'm making the same amount of money. What's going on? And a mentor and a good friend of mine told me, like, look, it's a marathon, not a sprint. Patience, it's going to pay off. And I'll never forget it. It was a Friday. I was probably 3 months in at this point in time, and I sold over $30,000 on this Friday. And it was all because like people I had called over the last 80, 90 days started coming through. And it was just like, I'm ringing the bell, I'm ringing the bell, I'm ringing the bell. I made 7 or 8, 9 sales that day. And it was just like, then it clicked. Wait a minute. The hard work is paying off. Now, how do I just become more efficient and more effective? And I think that was the big learning for me is truly take a step and then enjoy the journey, but more importantly, like it is a marathon, not a sprint. So that was a key learning. And then you can get granular with all the other learnings, like how to overcome objections, like how to think bigger and how to be more strategic and all those. But the big one is, hey, this is a marathon, not a sprint.
For you, in tickets is such a huge part of the revenue of teams, not only now, but moving forward. What do you think from a sales department standpoint of all the money that you've generated throughout your career? What do you think is the one leadership mistake that a lot of sales departments do? And what do you think is the number one leadership win that elite sales departments do?
Yeah, it's a great thing. A great question. I think, specifically, and they can tie together a little bit. One on the win is they're willing to evolve. And we talked a little bit about AI, but just evolving strategy in general. It used to be like, hey, sell as many fulls as possible. Where an evolution could be is like you take court sides and you're like, hey, you know what? Let's sell a 10 game plan on these courtside seats and jack up their price, make more ATP. And like,
Yeah.
how do you evolve some of that? How do you evolve some of the packaging? One of the biggest challenges is you have these companies that may buy 4 season tickets, but then you're like, you struggle with the, hey, you should also do an employee outing. So how do you evolve with the packaging and the opportunity like that? And then on the flip side, I think from a leadership end, and look, like I am self-aware and I'm vulnerable enough to like own it. It's like it took me time to get away from what I expected. And so what I mean by that is not to date myself, but right, there are times that like we would call out of yellow books. There were times that if the computer system down, it's fine because you can just smile and dial whoever you wanted. And so it took me time to evolve that, hey, there's other tactics than just a phone call. There's other ways to communicate with people. And I think that is something on a leadership end that I think a lot of leaders, especially more of your older or veteran leaders like myself, where it's like, we made in this business because we were making a couple hundred calls a day. And if you don't make that, you got issues. Now, you also never hear me say that phone call is dead. I still think that is the best path to have success, but I do think there's a little bit of that as well.
Going from the team to league, what did working at the NBA and the league office teach you about maybe what some things that teams get wrong?
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest thing with Teambo, as you mentioned, where in my main role is to oversee ticketing. And so for all the NBA, W, and G League teams, and some key learnings where you're going in there and you're like seeing best practices, but on both ends, right? You're seeing best practices like, hey, this is what teams should implement because it's really successful. Hey, this is a best practice of what not to do, right? Or hey, these teams are trying this and it's not working. You should evolve. But I also think working at the league level is, I was always on the team side early on in my career was always just ticketing, right? Ticket, ticket. Working at the league level, going in and meeting and sitting down with people on the partnership side, on the marketing side, on the digital side, just to get a better grasp of what goes into their day to day. So I became, what I felt like I became a much better leader because now when I'm sitting in that, and even today, when I'm sitting and talking to somebody about marketing specifically, I have best practices. I have ideas. Like I still want to be a sponge, but I think that was a big key learning for me as well.
So as you transitioned from being on the revenue side of teams and then starting your own company, what are some traits that you've taken from your ticketing experience, revenue experience in the NBA and MLB and NHL that you've taken in and saying, while I don't have these big brands to represent, this is how I add value to your organization?
Yeah, I think a couple things. I think one, going back and using a sports analogy, like I used to be fine just hitting singles all the time. Like, still want to try to hit a home run every once in a while, but I was content with a bunt single, like small deals because they add up. Now owning my own company and seeing not only the P&L, but the budget of what I have set for myself is I've got to hit a lot more home runs than I have singles. And so I've become, let's call it more of a power hitter, right? I'm going for a lot more triples and home run swings versus the bunt singles. It's just thinking bigger, right? I think and that's something that I learned early on in my career is if you have to think big, and even on the sales end, right? You could spend all day, every day calling single game buyers. You may hit somebody that could buy a courtside seat or behind home plate or whatever it may be and knock off $40,000, $50,000. But for the most part, you're knocking off $500 to $1,500,
Right.
where you start calling B2B, they've got the budget, they have the resources to sell, to buy 30, 40, 50, 100, 200 grand worth. And that was something early on in my career of like, how do I if I have to think big and go bigger, and same thing with my own company, like I'm constantly trying to think about bigger picture, bigger potentials. Like I've even partnered with teams and leagues, maybe on a smaller end to prove myself and say, you know what, I'll do a quick search or I'll do a quick 90-day consulting project. And many of those have now turned into year-long deals or multiple searches. And I think that's always beneficial as well.
So from a consulting standpoint, you going into an organization, you're walking in. What are the first three things you like to diagnose?
It all comes down to the three P's, in my opinion. It's people, process, and productivity. The first thing I want is to really look into people. And I'm not saying I'm not coming in to be the Grim Reaper, right? And saying, okay, hey, this
Yeah.
person should stay, this person should go. But it's like, what are the types of people? Are you structured the right way from a people perspective? What are their characteristics? Where are some people maybe missing? So a deep dive into that. When it comes into the process and we think about sales specifically, what is that sales process? Like, and there are times I'll ask a leader, like, all right, what's your campaign strategy? What's your go-to-market strategy? And they may look at me like I have three heads. So it's, are you implementing a right process from a lead nurturing campaign to an outreach campaign to an event sales campaign to a follow-up campaign and process? What is that true overall sales process and strategy? And then you're crazy if you don't look at the productivity, not only of what they're currently doing. And so you're gaining data, you're gaining insights of maybe what went well, what didn't go well. But then on the flip side of once you start implementing maybe other people or another process, what results are coming from that? And so those are really the big three things when I consult with teams, leagues, or organizations is people, process, and productivity.
Do you see, we were talking about this prior to recording this, but we were talking a little bit about how sports is sometimes 2 or 3 years behind what's happening currently. Do you think from an AI standpoint, will that affect the ability for teams to be able, from a headcount perspective, of either lowering or raising their headcount based on the fact that can AI have the tools to make some of these outreaches and save time ultimately, going back to the productivity piece?
Yeah, absolutely. And I have consulted with teams and leagues of, and I hate to say it because on one end of my business is executive search. So I want to try to hire as many people, but hey, I would take a head count or two and plug in a couple AI tools or an AI tool and get your better people the best leads. And there's a company I'm a strategic advisor for called Wolf Cycle. And I've literally like, will talk to leaders and look, if you have an open head count, don't fill it, plug that money in there. And it's the ROI is going to be there time over time. And I think
Right.
that's the way people should think about things. So, yeah, on one end, it's sad because there may not be as many jobs. But on the flip side, the really successful or the elite people are probably going to get better leads and better opportunities to make a hell of a lot more money as well.
Yeah, 100%. From an exec search standpoint, you've hired a bunch of people when you were on the team side and obviously now working in the search business. What traits matter that resumes don't show? And what's something that maybe is an insight into how teams, leagues hire that maybe somebody listening to this podcast would be, oh, I never thought about positioning myself in order to stand out in a certain way?
Yep. Some of this what I'm going to discuss is fairly basic, but it's areas where I see a lot of candidates miss. And I'll start like entry level. If you're coming out of college, if you're listening, you're a college student, don't just get one internship. What's going to land you that full-time job or that entry level job is your experience. And I don't care if it's job shadowing. I don't care in college. Like I went door to door selling kitchens, windows, and gutter caps, but it was sales experience. And that's what I can discuss. Excuse me. Too many people. Oh, I had a business major and I got one internship. That's not truly showing that you went above and beyond. Same thing. Once you get that inside that business and you're now applying or a search firm has reached out to you about a potential another opportunity, like now you've got to really dial in and say, okay, my resume is only going to get my name on the desk. I need to be able to share my real life stories and real life experiences. But again, it should be like if you are a sales rep right now and you want to get into leadership, what are some leadership shadowings that you've done? Have you built a playbook? Have you built what you're going to implement with the team and implement the opportunity? Like even there's times that I'll go to interview a leader candidate, whether it be an entry level leader or a veteran leader, and I'll ask them like, what's in your playbook? What's your 30, 60, 90 look like? And again, they aren't necessarily prepared to talk about it. You constantly want to be prepared, and ready for the next job, right? They always say dress for the job that you want, not that you have.
Sure.
That dress is sure you can wear a shirt and tie, whatever. It's more importantly, in my opinion, that dress is, do you have your playbook ready that you're going to implement and execute? Do you have your best practices, both good and bad, that you're going to implement?
What do you think the number one reason teams churn talent?
It's a good question. I think one, in sales, I don't think it's ever a bad thing to refill some of your team. And that could come positive and negative, right? I've lost sales team members over the years because they've gotten another job, they've got into leadership, they went elsewhere. On the flip side, maybe they were struggling, they aren't a culture fit, or maybe you guys, you know it, like some people just burn out, right? They're not fit
Yeah.
to work. Sports is not 9 to 5.
Yeah.
You're going to work a lot of nights, a lot of weekends. Like people burn out, or I've had a lot of friends that have gotten out of the business because they've decided to have families or they've decided to relocate somewhere and they're like, you know what, I miss it, but I get more time. And that work-life balance is very difficult in this setting as well.
Oh, it's funny. One of my first jobs, I was an account executive for partnerships at the Diamondbacks. And I had a friend say, "Oh, if you have a game the night before, can you just go in at 11?" I was like, "No, dude. Like, it doesn't matter. Like,
Yep.
we're going in." And I think so many people miss that fact about saying, "Hey, it's great to work in sports, but when everyone's there at the game drinking, you're working." And it is interesting that the churn. To your point, I've had a lot of friends do the same thing of going and do something else, and all power to them, and they're doing well. Look, you've helped companies through M&A, right? And to take a little, I think M&A is a broad term that a lot of people have a hard time understanding. For you, can you break down from an M&A standpoint the basics of who, what, when, where, why?
Yeah, I've been fortunate to be part of kind of three different ones. One was my own company, a lot less the who, what, when, where, why, right? No bankers involved. It was me putting together my deck, presenting myself and my brand and my company. And then, quite frankly, to be honest, taking like the highest offer and the offer that I thought made the most sense because it was also one that I wanted to sell and stay on. Two other ones were much more involved in selling a vendor into different companies. And the who is you've got your company, you've got your brand. Now you are meeting with bankers to put together your sales strategy, right? Who is your company? It's almost like that. Who is your company? What do you do? Who are your potential clients? Like, and why? And then, that was both of those were very fun experiences because you would get on Zooms, then also ultimately in person, and you're excuse me, trying to sell yourself, right? You're selling your brand, you're selling your company, you're selling the kind of the SWOT analysis of those. And it's you're getting picked and prodded, right? Because you're in both of these. I've met with both like other organizations that are like competitors, of that, but I also was meeting with like just private equity. And so the competitors, they knew all the ins and outs, right? So they were peppering like deal terms and deal sizes and what this looked like and what's the strategy. The private equity didn't necessarily know the business, so they were then needling same thing, like why this deal?
Right.
There's not enough percentage points here. There's not enough this. Hey, why aren't you doing a deal with this type of entity and explaining that? And both of those were very interesting, but also very good from a learning experience. Like I learned a ton, not only sitting in the room with high level executives at either teams or at private equities. And so they've clearly made money and have been very successful. So learning from that, but also just understanding like the questions you should ask and how deep you want to get in. And I think I look back the first time I started my company and sold it, but then now the time I started my company, like I did things differently based on a lot of that experience I had.
Yeah, said. What do buyers really care about? A lot of people think from an M&A, it's all about the sales side, but having a peek in, what do buyers you really care about? Whether that's a metric, whether that's the business, what does that look like when you're sitting on the other side and trying to think, if I was in their shoes, what would they want?
Yeah, and in a lot of these settings, they're looking to, is it a scalable and sustainable business? So they're looking into what's the current lay of the land right now. Where do you feel like it could get to? Because many of these companies, like you typically when you buy a company, most of the time you're buying it to put in your kind of blood, sweat, and equity, and obviously money to then probably resell it again down the road. Private equity, you're probably looking to resell in 3 to 5 years. If you're another firm, you're probably building it to build your enterprise because then you're going to sell your entire enterprise. It might be 10, 15, 20 years down the road. So most of the questions are, okay, what do you feel like you've done well and have had success with now? But then more importantly, in the future, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, where do you think this business could go and could be at?
Yeah. I want to pivot a little bit to your 52 weeks of hustle, which I'm a avid listener to. When you started that, what was your thought process in getting guests, how you're going to go about really educating the masses on sports business? What was your thesis behind the 52 weeks of hustle? Because
Yeah,
people, again, it's a great podcast for people that haven't
thank
watched it.
you. I appreciate, I think a couple things. One, going back to growing up and in college, I was in this media, so I always enjoyed doing it. I always joke, I realized I had a face for radio and I didn't really want a radio station. That's why I got into sales. But so I always liked that. And I was having dinner one time. This was, if you think back to the time, this was January of 2020. So before the world shut down, with a mentor of mine and a good friend, Dr. Bernie Mullen. And Bernie, in quick story, Bernie Mullen was the CEO of the Atlanta Hawks and Thrashers when I started in inside sales. So I was making $8 an hour, 7% commission. It was a 9-month program. He spoke to us on the first day and said, if I can ever be of assistance, let me know. Me being crazy, naive, or just dumb, I emailed him that night. Hey, thank you so much. I'm really excited to be part of the team. I would love to pick your brain. He literally emailed me back, put his assistant on, let's find some time for lunch the next week. The CEO of a company chose to
Wow.
spend time with me, this lonely, weird 21-year-old, 22-year-old kid. And so from that day on, I was like, I always want to be able to give back. I'll never be above giving back. And so I was having dinner with him. We were kind of reminiscing about it. And I was like, I've been thinking about starting a podcast. Would you ever be on it? He's like, if you don't start a podcast, you're crazy. You've got this network. I'd love to be on it. And so I taped my first couple episodes in February of 2020 before the world shut down. Because on the podcast, and then you want to edit it and clip it, you want to figure it
Yeah, of
out.
course.
So I finally launched it in May, which, as everybody knows, all the listeners know, the world shut down. So they were looking for content. And so it took off from there. I just recently released my 300th episode. So every week on Wednesdays, I release it. But I really started it and continued it to give back not only to the industry, to give back to people that want to get better. I always say, whether you're in the industry and you want to continue to improve, I'm going to have some great stories and some great people on here. Or if you want to try to get in this business, or I'll get hit up by people, hey, I never really knew anything about the sports business. So I listened to a couple of your episodes and like, now I want to get into it. They may have been in a different industry for 15, 20 years. That's what it continues on. And obviously I can't do it without two big things. One, people willing to share their story and provide advice. And two, people that want to listen and listen. Right? You're not going to release an episode if you don't get any listeners. And so I'm very thankful for both those.
What I mean, for you, what makes you think an episode a really good episode? If you have somebody on that is a personality, what makes it very good versus average?
Yeah. Every guest I have is awesome. Right. No, but as you
Well,
first,
yes,
right?
yes.
But no, I always say, even if the episodes will probably get more listeners, it's certainly a personality, right? It's similar to this, right? Where you're talking about their career. You don't want somebody just very short to the point. Yep, really enjoyed my career. And then it's like the next question, right? So somebody has a personality, but also I think what also makes a good episode is somebody that is vulnerable and real, right? And typically a lot of the questions I'll ask is, what is something you know now that you wish you would have known back then? What is something, where is an area that maybe you evolved too late? And so I think having people share that, because I think oftentimes people that are sitting in a director, VP, CRO, CEO chair, oftentimes I feel like what from that is many times it's, oh, like they do nothing wrong and they've worked their way up. They've had just this smooth sailing career. Most of the time, you take a lot of bumps along the way. And so I think that always makes a really good episode of like people sharing that, yeah, this hasn't always been easy. Hey, this is a struggle. Hey, this was a hard time in my career, in my life. And here's what I did to try to overcome it.
No, I think that helps so much because for somebody growing up in the industry like myself, like you see these people like the Al Guidos, I don't know why I just thought about Guido, CEO of the Niners, but those type of people that you think, oh, they just went from A to B, no problem. And
Yep.
I think it really helps young people as I would have been a great podcast if I was like 25, 26, really listening to it. But nothing's linear. And that's what I've realized in life and business. Nothing's ever as we think it's going to go.
Yep.
It's always going to be peaks, valleys. And I'm sure that you've had that in not only your own career, but your own business.
Yep. Oh, absolutely. Like and look, there are times you may have a peak and a valley all in the same day.
Yeah,
You
exactly.
may,
Exactly. Yeah.
and I think that's where it's, and I've always learned and have tried to live this life of, hey, you can't ride the highs too high or the lows too low. Now, just last week, I landed a really good deal, but then fell short on another deal.
Yeah.
And so it was like, really, if I wrote it too high, it'd be like, oh, I'm on top of the world. And then it'd come crashing down. It was like, okay, great, landed a big deal. Let's continue to improve. And
Yeah.
then, so
Exactly.
not riding the highs too high and the lows too low
Yeah.
is very important.
We're going to do a speed round
Love
to
it.
end this. I want to be cognizant of your time. So I'm gonna do about 6 prompts. You give me a 15 to 20-second answer, or just
Alrighty.
one, well, however you want to do it. Most overrated metric in sports business.
Most overrated metric. If you're talking specifically as a seller versus a team, I think that is a distributed number. I think that's an who cares what that is. But I think as a seller is I'll give it two ways. One is I don't think it's really over of, oh, I want to be I'm more efficient. That means I don't have to make as many calls. Imagine if you did both. And I think the most overrated metric in sales, honestly, is your tenure.
Mm,
I don't
mm.
like I've seen sales teams where a first or
Great
second
point.
year person crushes a person that's been there 10 or 15 years just because it's sales. They overgrinded them.
What's one tool or process you'd keep if everything else got deleted?
Phone calls.
One negotiation rule you never break.
I know this probably sounds cliche, but stay true to yourself. And what I mean by that, even as I look at today, if I'm in a negotiation with a search agreement, let's call it, and it's just way out of like my my expertise or where, hey man, this I don't know if I'm gonna be able to touch this. Just stay true to yourself, like in everything you do. Don't try to say you're somebody that you're not.
What's the worst pitch habit you see constantly?
Used car salesman. And what I mean by that is like they don't go in and try to truly build rapport and assess. They just come in and they know they have this pen or this ticket and they just try to force feed a product without truly building rapport.
One prediction for the next 18 months in sports business.
I know this is again probably another cliche thing because I know there's a lot of articles and a lot of things about it, but flexible flexible ticketing. And what I mean by that is just I think you're going to see a lot more flexible options, partial plans, etc. that are going to be pretty important.
And I think for you personally, how does Travis Apple want to be known 5 years from now?
I both my company name, my podcast, I wrote a book, all have the same word as hustle. Like I just want people to say there's nobody that can ever outwork him. He hustles, but he not only hustles from a work ethic perspective, he hustles to try to help people and try to help give back. There's never a time he's not willing to answer a call or be open to a conversation with someone.
Well, I'm certainly grateful for you to switch out of your host chair and be the guest on my podcast. So I
This was
really
a lot of fun. I appreciate it.
Yeah, no, I wanted to give you a little break from hosting and go on the other side, but,
It's a good
um,
break. It's been fun.
and so where can people find 52 Weeks of Hustle? Is that they type that in on Apple or
Yeah.
Spotify?
Yep. 52 Weeks Hustle. Yep. Any your podcast platform. And yeah, it's all there. Every Wednesday I release a new episode. And I appreciate you and I appreciate everyone tunes in as well.
Yeah, this is great. Again, 52 Weeks of Hustle host Travis Apple, as well as the many other things that he's involved in. So, Travis, thanks so much for joining, and hope to talk soon.
Taylor, thank you so much. I certainly appreciate you doing this. And obviously you're giving back as well. So this is awesome.
Love it.